Welcome to Life Purpose by Design. On today's episode, we are going to talk about or have a conversation empowered on choice. John Maxwell said, "Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make you." On today's episode, I am joined by an awesome guest, author Lori Vober, the author of the book Choices. So join me as we talk about her miraculous walking miracle journey of faith and perseverance. Join me with I am so excited about this episode, Empowered by Choice. I am joined by a very special guest, author Lori Vober, who is the author of the book Choices. Lori is going to share with us her testimony of being a walking miracle, sharing her faith journey of faith and a perseverance in order to encourage others. So I hope that you will set this time aside and that you will give us your full attention as I'm joined by author Lori Vober.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am so glad that you're here also. Lori, you and I don't believe in coincidences, and you and I met as part of the She Writes for Him boot camp with Redemption Press. And we happened to, God arranged for us to be in one of the breakout rooms together where we were just sharing about our journey of being writers and authors and some of the challenges that we have encountered, but more importantly, the blessings and the privilege that we have been given to be writers and instruments, like in God's hands, to write messages to encourage each other. So I'm just so excited that God put us together and to think that it all ended up being where we are tonight.
Yes, yes. And isn't that the amazing thing about faith, isn't it?
Yes, so I want to share with our audience a little bit about your background. So, Lori and her husband reside in Goodyear, Arizona. She is a member of the Desert Spring Community Church, and they've actually have she has a very special testimony to share with you about additions to their family. But Lori believes that God has a plan for each of us, and her favorite verse is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So, Lori, not only are we sisters in Christ, not only are we writing pens in the hands of God, but we also share Jeremiah 29:11 as being one of our favorite Bible verses. So, this is definitely a divine appointment for the two of us to join tonight. So, I want to get you right into having Lori kind of talk about her book and what that book means to each of you in order to for you to be encouraged, for you to know about what is that journey like to have be on a journey of faith during times of difficulties and during times of perseverance and difficulties. So I want to kind of start off with sharing a few of the quotes from Lori's books as she's going to rejoin us and be part of our conversation. And so, one of the things that Lori talks about in the book is I have learned you just never know what the real plan is, and only God knows. And so, even tonight, as we are trying to reconnect with Lori and her connections to our live broadcast tonight, I just believe that God is going to just work through all this technology and He's going to kind of bring everything together. But while we're waiting for Lori to reconnect with us, I want to encourage you to check out her book on Amazon, which is available for order. And I love the subtitle that says, "When you are faced with a challenge, what choice will you make?" So make sure that you are supporting her through ordering her book, reading the book, and more importantly, letting your life be encouraged by the book that she has. So, one of the things that Lori shared when I was reading the book that really moved me was the fact that she was part of a college marching band. And she says in the book, "I was not the most talented, but I loved every minute of being a part of the band and giving it 100% effort." And so, giving it 100% effort, even when you are not seeing yourself as being at, the top of the game, or being somebody who somebody else would see as being, the most gifted or the most talented. Lori knew that up front, but it didn't stop her from joining the college band and giving it 100% of her time and her efforts. And so, as we hopefully get Lori back on and that she's able to share with us, if not, you know what? God still has a word and he still has a message. So, if we're not able to get her back reconnected with us, then we will definitely reschedule this live and bring Lori back. But I want to just share one more quotables from Lori, a few quotables from Lori. And I don't want to give the whole book away, but I do want to kind of give you a hint or a taste of what you will encounter as you're getting her book and reading it, and at the appointed time being able to have her here live on Life Purpose by Design. One of the things that Lori says is sometimes all we can do is depend on God's faithfulness, one moment at a time. Her other quotable that I pulled out was, "You can't change the past, so the only thing you have control over is how you handle today and tomorrow." So, with those two quotes, I just want to encourage you to check out my sister friend, Lori, who, thank God, is back with us.
Oh, technology.
It's all good. It is all good. I've been enjoying just sharing some of your quotables from your book and encouraging others to purchase the book. So before we get frozen again, we're going to jump into this conversation. So, Laura, can you share with me what prompted you to write this book and to share your story? And first of all, what is your story?
Yes, thank you so much. So, at the age of 29, I suffered a major hemorrhagic stroke based off a malformation of blood vessels off the right side of my brain that was never detected. I had had this malformation since birth, and it was just never detected. And 3 weeks prior to my stroke, I made a major job change from corporate America, working for the airlines, to a job change at our church. I accepted a job as our office manager. My husband and I were trying to start a family at the time, and we thought less travel, less stress would help. And I actually think that God was trying to save my life by helping me with this job change, and He put me in a safe environment. 3 weeks later, I suffered this massive stroke and was rushed to the hospital. I was unconscious before I got to the hospital. Went through a 5-hour brain surgery to stop the brain bleed, and I woke up 17 days later out of a drug-induced coma with a completely paralyzed left side. And we started from the beginning, learning to talk and swallow and speak, and eventually sit up and stand and walk. And from then on, rehab became my life. And I was in the hospital for 2 months. I had a second brain surgery that was a 10-hour brain surgery to remove the malformation so another stroke wouldn't happen. And then my husband and I went home to live with my parents because our house was not suitable with the stairs. And my whole world began again with rehab at that point.
Oh, wow.
So that was just the beginning of our adventure of rehab. We lived in Minnesota at the time. My husband was in the airline industry, and 9/11 had happened. And so a trickle down effect. He actually lost his job 2 months after my stroke. So he quickly found another position in Arizona, which is why we're in Arizona now. So we moved to Arizona, but I like Jeremiah 29:11 is my favorite verse because I do think God has a plan for everything. And although the plan was to move to Arizona for his job, I believe the plan was also to move to Arizona to help me in my recovery. I know I would never have recovered the way I have had we stayed in Minnesota with the ice and the snow. And my therapists really were not sure how to help me farther along than they had already helped me. And when we came to Arizona, I found an amazing neuro rehab facility that I was their first patient. I was first group of patients. They had just opened the facility, and they helped me make tremendous progress. At the time, I was walking with a cane and had absolutely no movement in my left hand or arm. And so I worked a solid 6 to 8 hours a day for 7 years. It was my full time job, and they got me to a point where I could be independent and walk without assistance and use my left hand as a left hand assist to my right hand. And 7 years post stroke, Danis and I decided we were at a crossroads. We could continue living the way we were, or we could pick up with our family planning. And that's when we decided that we were called to adopt. And so we adopted 3 children internationally at that point in 2011 from Colombia, South America.
Ah, what a journey. What a
Yes.
journey. So tell us how your journey relates to the title of your book.
Yes, definitely. So I felt about a year ago called to write my story. I heard vividly God say, I saved you from a stroke and I gave you a story, so get busy writing. So that's what I did. And I really felt called to the title choices because I really feel like we're all faced with challenges. Some are bigger than others. Mine happened to be pretty big, but it doesn't matter whether you're faced with small challenges, big challenges. We all have challenges in our life, and we all have choices of what we're going to do with those challenges. And when we're faced with a challenge, we can give up or we can persevere. And my attitude and my ability to persevere through my challenges has served me really, really well. And so that's how I came up with the title of the book. And that's really my big message is no matter what your challenge is, whether it's big or small, persevere, have a good attitude, and always look for the glass is half full, not half empty, and it will serve you really well.
Awesome. And I mentioned earlier that there was a quote by John Maxwell that says, life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. And so, as you have shared your story and your choice to operate and live from a place of faith, your choice to persevere, your choice to believe that God had even a greater plan, a plan not to harm you, but to prosper you, to give you a future and a hope. And your being here tonight is definitely a testimony of that future and that hope that God had purposed and planned for you. And not only you, for your family. Tell us about, how that Jeremiah 29:11 fits with your decision to adopt and the impact that you are able to make in the future and the hope of even other lives other than just your own.
Well, I do hope that you know, our decision to adopt is definitely, we adopted three. They were ages 6, 8, and 10 at the time. And our hope was that we would give children a forever family that might not otherwise have that opportunity. And we don't know what God's plan is for our kids, and the story's unwritten. But we do hope that just by giving them the love and the encouragement and support that we have, that they'll carry that with them. And I just hope that the way I've chosen and my husband has chosen to live his life, and my book will help others to see that no matter what they face, that there's always hope for a better tomorrow, and not to give up and to keep persevering. And that I hope that people can look at what I've gone through, and the way I have persevered, it will give them some encouragement.
Well, I want to encourage you that as I was reading your book, this is so much more than just your story. As I read the first 12 chapters, and it was very hard to put the book down
Oh, thank you.
and get some rest. So I actually picked up the remaining chapters today because I wanted it to be fresh for our conversation. And there is so much in there about, yes, certainly faith, certainly perseverance, and reading your story and recognizing just the boldness and the courage that you had to keep pushing through, to just keep pushing through. But I learned so much about your book from about parenting, about grandparenting. I have 7 grandchildren, and I'm telling you, as you were sharing the journey with your 3 children, adopted children, and you gave such good advice that sometimes we have to recognize that there are certain decisions that they're just going to make on their own. You
Hmm.
talked a lot about natural consequences. And I was so busy, literally, this is my notepad from reading your book, and it is filled with notes from page to page because, and I wrote down the page number because I wanted to be able to go back to that part of the book, to look at these nuggets. And I want to read something that you said, and it was in chapter 2 where you talked about your wedding honeymoon and your career plans. And it was on page 34. You said, I have learned that we have control over so little, but God has control over it all with a bigger plan than we will ever see this side of heaven. All we can do is trust and have hope in things yet to come. That is so powerful. And when I read the words that we will ever know on this side of heaven, those words just did something to me because I think about your story, but I think about so many stories that I've heard from other women who've been in places of difficulties and challenges. And it doesn't matter that it's not the same thing that we've experienced. I always say pain is pain, regardless of the source. But we have control over so little. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
And how we have so little control over so little. Yes, I mean, we really do have so little control over so little. I mean, I look at my stroke. Who would have thought in a million years at age 29 I would have a stroke? But as a prime example, and I discuss it in my book, Sheila, God knew that. And when I moved to Minnesota, as an example, I moved to Minnesota strictly for career. I was very career oriented. And so at the time, I was with the petroleum industry, and I was from a corporate background from my dad growing up, where if the company says you go, you go, and a corporate company says jump, you say how high. And so when they said there was an opportunity, I knew nothing about Minnesota except that there was a great job opportunity there. But God knew that that's where my godly husband was going to be. And Danis was raised in a family where his mom was sick with cancer a good portion of his life. And so he watched his dad take care of his mom for 16 years. And she actually passed away a month before we met. And God knew that. And He knew that I would need a man in my life by my side as my mate that had the capabilities and the background to handle my medical issues. I didn't know that. And so, as a prime example, God put forth the plans for us to meet and for Danis to be my mate when we met in Minnesota, and we were only dating 6 weeks before he asked me to marry him. And again, I think he was the perfect mate for me. It, because God knew what was in store in our future, and He knew that I would need someone by my side when the medical challenges hit. So that's just one of many, many examples of God has us covered. Um, we just have to keep our eyes on Him because you just never know what's going to happen in the future.
And that's what your book touches on so much, from a journey of faith, a perseverance through your own personal struggles, and the miracle part of it, because the miracle is so much bigger than the struggle itself. It touches on parenting. For me, it was about grandparenting. It touches about the sacredness of wedding vows, as you share very openly about your husband and the support system. It talks about your relationship with your parents. It's so much in this book. And so I just want to encourage anyone who, listens to this live, that this really is just not about a book about reading about Lori's testimony of being a stroke survivor. This is a lifeline book. It's a
I
lifeline book. And like I said, I'm telling you, I have journaled so much out of this book that I just think anyone who reads it, whether they're, going through a medical challenge, whether they're thinking about adoption, it's just so much in there. And I definitely want to have you back on Life Purpose by Design, because I want to dig into some of those topics for people who may be um, dealing with some of the same type of things that you had to be more than a conqueror, and you have definitely done that. And so I want to ask you, well, one of the things I took note of is that it was 8 years past post your stroke that you all went on this journey of adoption. I thought that was so amazing. That just seems like such a short period of time. It's something that I probably would say, I need 10 to 15 years. But it was just so amazing to me that out of all your struggles, you and your husband was still able to pour out compassionate love to your 3 children.
Oh, thank you. Well, we had started when we first got married. My husband and I both were avidly involved in the organization Compassion International.
Okay.
So we had always supported children, and children had always been a big part of our life. And so I think we have always had that sense of love and compassion for children, and it always had carried through. So when we made the decision that we didn't feel like, based on my disability and the medications, it was a safe avenue to continue trying to start a family on our own after my stroke. And because of the stroke, I also started having seizures and developed epilepsy. We decided that we had enough love to join an adoption, and both my husband and I are only children, so that's why we chose a sibling group, because we were both only children. We never knew what it was like to have brothers and sisters, and so we chose to adopt more than one.
Okay. So I want to share one more quote from your book. And this was found in chapter 7. It says, "We have experienced all those challenges and have come out still loving each other deeply and looking toward the future and what God's next plan for us will be." And
Yes.
I just think that's such an awesome place to land our conversation about you've experienced the challenges and you have come out still loving each other deeply and looking towards the future. So with that, is there, there are so many nuggets in what you've already shared. Is there something that you would like our viewing audience to be their biggest takeaway from your life journey and your faith witness?
Oh, I appreciate that very much. I think you've touched on so many things already. I think the big thing is, we can't control our circumstances and we can't control people. And uh, we have learned with the pandemic a lot about that. I do think connection and fellowship is extremely important. However, I think that if we can remember to um, not let other people define our happiness and to find our happiness in God and who God says we are, that is key. And not to let other people's expectations and other people's circumstances and the circumstances around us define either who we are or our happiness are key. And that's so hard in this world, but if that's one thing I've learned, um, and definitely not perfect at, but that's something I definitely strive to get better at.
Well, and that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of our viewers, Miss Addie Frederick, says this is very, very informative and encouraging. I'm enjoying it all. So thank you so much for, again, being encouraging and sharing very openly and candidly about your struggles. And so I had these personal reflection questions that I want our viewers to think about. And so I just want to share as you've listened to Lori's testimony and some of the pathways of choices that she's had to take. What is the most important choice that you need to make today? And is now the right time? And if not now, then when do you anticipate making that choice? How long have you been contemplating about this? What are the potential risks of making the choice or not making the choice? There's no neutral ground in life. Every day we have to make choices. What is the risk of not making the choice? What is it that you would be missing out on if you made no choice whatsoever? You've heard about Lori's testimony. You've heard about some of the choices she made, how they went beyond themselves to create a forever home for a family or siblings of three. And what choice empowers you to become the person that God purposed? As believers in Jesus Christ, Lori and we share our faith. And we know that part of that faith is that personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And it is that relationship that empowers us to become, first of all, to discover the person that God has purposed and to live through that purpose so that we can live that life as God has purposed by design. Lori, I want to thank you so much for sharing just a tidbit of your journey and of your testimony. Again, I will definitely be encouraging the Life Purpose by Design community to purchase and to not just purchase, but to read and engage with your book choices. It is a powerful lifeline that you can just, it's just so much in it. And it's one of those books that I definitely will be reading more than once. So, was there anything else that you wanted to share?
I just want to thank you again so very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, like I said, we will definitely be talking again because I really want to dig in a little deeper. There are too many nuggets for us just to cover it in the short time span. So I don't know, we might have to do a series with you, Laura, and some others
I would absolutely love that.
to go through the topics. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this episode of Life Purpose by Design, Empowered by Choice. And so, if you're interested in taking that next step to mapping out your goals, your visions, and your life map to be living empowered by choices, please feel free to contact me at Life Purpose by Design Consulting for the services that we offer for speaking, coaching, and training. We would be more than honored and consider it a privilege to walk beside you as you learn to live empowered on purpose for the life that God has designed. Thank you so much for joining us, and join us next time here at Life Purpose by Design.